I feel the need for. I was kind of hoping I would come up with my need for by the time I finished that sentence, but I still got nothing. So Captain Marvel is the newest movie in the MCU, at least for the next few months until we get Endgame. I believe this is movie number 21 in the MCU. And this movie introduces us to Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. At the end of Infinity War, we saw Nick Fury paging somebody. We weren't sure who it was at first. Turns out it was Captain Marvel. And from then on, we were like, I really want to see Captain Marvel, and I really want to know who Captain Marvel is. Now we get that. Captain Marvel is played by Brie Larson. She starts out as part of the Kree Space Force, which they call themselves Star Force Command, which I remember that because every time they said it in the movie, I was thinking, oh, Star Force Command, you know, like Star Command. She's part of a mission that goes wrong, and through those circumstances, she crash lands on Earth, where she finds out she used to have a life. And from there, she teams up with a young, two-eyed Nick Fury as they team up to unravel this whole mystery and find out what both the Krees and the Skrulls are after on Earth. I was really looking forward to Captain Marvel, but I'm not gonna lie, the trailers, which I don't think I did any videos on any of the trailers, however, the trailers didn't blow me away. I thought the movie looked fun. It looked a little generic. It looked a little Green Lantern-esque, which I don't hate the Green Lantern movie, and especially the Space Force parts of it are the parts that I actually like. But it didn't look like it was gonna stand out in any way. It didn't look like it was gonna become the next Black Panther, the next Infinity War, the next Civil War. And coming out of the movie, I will say, you know what? It doesn't have to be that, because Captain Marvel on its own is a really fun movie. I'm not entirely sure where everybody stands with this movie. I know it has like an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think that most of the people that are seeing it are liking it. It's not in my top 5 MCU movies. In fact, I'm not even positive it's in my top 10. But when a movie as good as Captain Marvel isn't even in your top 10 favorite MCU movies, you know that's a pretty solid franchise. One of the things that people were most nervous about going into this movie, I know, was Brie Larson. She is a great actress. Didn't she win an Oscar for Room? I think she did. She at least got nominated. She's great. The trailers don't really do her justice. Yeah, her character is a little more stoic and reserved, which they do show in the trailer, but being in this fish out of water situation, she reminded me a lot of Chris Hemsworth in the first Thor movie. There's some fun elements they play off of with that fish out of water scenario. I thought Brie Larson did a good job handling that, and I thought she did a good job handling some of the more dramatic elements of the movie too. The other big standout of this movie, Ben Mendelsohn. He plays the main Skrull in this movie, whose name I don't remember. I think it started with a T. I was kind of nervous about Ben Mendelsohn's character because I really like Ben Mendelsohn, but at the same time, I like Christopher Eccleston, and look at what being underneath a bunch of makeup in a Marvel movie did for him. Yeah, I was worried about this being another dark elf Malekith situation, but the script gave a lot of personality to Ben Mendelsohn's character, and he did a great job delivering all that. I thought he had a really interesting backstory. He was probably the scene stealer of this whole movie. I thought everybody else in the movie was pretty good. Jude Law was good, Annette Bening was good, Lashana Lynch was good. Actually, another scene stealer in this movie, along with Ben Mendelsohn, I thought Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, a younger Nick Fury, was great. We've seen Nick Fury in these movies a bunch, but this is the first time he's had a really significant role, and the first time he's been in more than 5 minutes of a movie since, what, Winter Soldier? He did a great job at a young Nick Fury, who's new to S.H.I.E.L.D., he's a little bit of a young hotshot. Carol Danvers and the Kree being his first exposure to extraterrestrial life. It's cool seeing him get first exposed to these extraterrestrial threats, knowing what's going to happen later in the MCU. Also, something I thought was cool in this movie, and I'm not sure exactly where people stand on this, I thought the action scenes were actually pretty sweet. Of course, nothing as mind-blowing as Thanos hurling a planet at Iron Man, and it doesn't have to be like that. There's a really sweet car chase about 15-20 minutes into the movie that I thought was really exciting, and then one where they're going through a military base as well. Those two together, along with the conclusion of this movie, I thought provided for some pretty sweet action. However, getting into negatives of the movie, script and continuity. While I was saying earlier in the review that Brie Larson was really good in this movie, she didn't stand out to me as much as a Thor, an Iron Man, a Spider-Man. But I think the biggest reason for that is while Brie Larson did a great job with what the script gave her, the script didn't give her all that much to work with. Like, she was fine and she served the movie well, but she doesn't stand out as one of like the greatest protagonists in the MCU. But you know what it actually reminded me of is I had very similar feelings coming out of my first viewing of Doctor Strange. I thought Benedict Cumberbatch was great as Stephen Strange. However, he feels a little bit like Tony Stark. I kind of feel like I've seen this story before. And that got better on repeat viewings, but I feel like especially once Infinity War hit, that's really where Doctor Strange came into his own for me. So I'm kind of expecting once Brie Larson is in Endgame and once the Russos get hold of her, I think she's going to become even more awesome. Which I'm not going to do a whole video on that new Endgame trailer, but how sweet was that ending when Thor grabs Stormbreaker and then she just stands there, doesn't faze her at all? I thought that was cool, so I'm excited to see her interactions with the rest of the Avengers. But back to Captain Marvel itself, Yeah, I thought the script was a little lacking in parts. I felt like this was a good introduction to Captain Marvel, but really only scratched the surface of what they could do with this story. The movie itself is a little by the numbers. Captain Marvel has amnesia. She crash lands on Earth. She's trying to figure out her past life that she used to have on Earth. So there's a little bit of a born identity element to it, and as far as amnesia stories go, this isn't one of the worst. I thought it was fine, and when Brie Larson hits those dramatic moments, it does become pretty cool. But I didn't always feel like the script was as strong as the people's acting that were acting it out was. And then being ultimately a prequel to the MCU, there's some continuity issues in there. It ties into some parts of the MCU where I was like, oh, that's cool and that's interesting, and the last scene of this movie brought a tear to my eye because it was beautiful and I loved it. However, there was a few things in the movie where I was like, wait, so if that happened, but this already happened in another movie, so I don't exactly see how that fits. There's mostly ways to get around the majority of that. However, there was one thing with the MacGuffin of the movie where I was kind of like, okay, how did point A lead to point B? Like, how is that in this movie? So I wouldn't mind a little more explanation there. Honestly, if they just did one of those Marvel one-shots like they used to do on the Blu-rays, they could solve that whole situation. And then there was one continuity thing that I guess makes sense, but when it played out, I was like, that's just the stupidest thing I've ever seen. I'm not going to get into spoilers of what that was, but I know if you've seen the movie, you probably know exactly what I was talking about, because I think a lot of other people feel the same way about this reveal. So a couple of bogus continuity things, a script that doesn't always live up to its potential, but I did still have a lot of fun with Captain Marvel. Is it going to stand out as one of like the top MCU movies? No, it's not. However, I've also heard a lot of people say this feels like a Phase 1 movie. I'm not going to say that, but at the same time, I don't see how that's a negative thing because Phase 1 was awesome. This movie felt right at home as movie number 21 in the MCU. I thought it was a pretty good setup to a cool character that I'm hoping to see do more awesome stuff in later movies. Do you absolutely have to go see Captain Marvel in order to understand Endgame? You probably don't. However, Captain Marvel on its own is a really solid movie, and if this looks like a movie you were interested in and you like superhero movies in general, I would go see Captain Marvel. So a good movie, not a top 10, but solid in its own right. The movie's been out for a little while now, so Captain Marvel, have you guys seen it? Let me know what you think of it down in the comments. And thank you so much for watching this video. If you guys liked it, you can click subscribe, check out some of my other videos, and I'll catch you guys next time.